Kia ora and welcome back to Wellywood Wargaming. In this episode of Sump Banter, I get to talk more shit about Necromunda, of course, and we're going to be exploring something that I don't think I've really seen a huge amount of coverage on, certainly on YouTube. So I'm trying to get to every single little bit of nitty gritty in the game at some point, and discuss every facet of Necromunda as the game evolves as well. But this time, in this episode, we're going to be talking about gang terrain. Now, there are many types of terrain in the game. Of course, now we've got the Ash Waste rules as well. We've got extra types of terrain and weather effects and stuff too. So I'm going to go through that at some point also. But today, we're really sticking with the gang-specific terrain. Now, what I mean by that is, we're not talking about bad zone environments. We're not talking about industrial terrain. We are purely talking about the actual gang-specific terrain. Now, if you've got any of the 6 House of books, House of Chains, House of whatever, then you will see that in this book there is a small amount of coverage on these gang terrain pieces that you can get. Now, I haven't really seen a huge amount of use of it. I'll be honest, in our campaigns, no one really bothers with it. I don't think people have really looked into it as much as maybe they should, but I've been reading them a lot lately and I've been quite excited by the modelling prospects, being able to build some really cool looking pieces of terrain and booby traps and stuff, but also just the thought of actually using them in games too. I think the problem with me is that I don't often play house gangs much. Now, a lot of these are just available for house gangs. There isn't much available for, say, Venators or outcasts or whatever, but today we're just going to be talking about the house-specific ones. Now, each of the 6 houses, whether it's Cawdor, Delac, Escher, whatever, is going to have 5 different exclusive pieces of gang terrain. So the general theme is that they have 1 or 2 booby traps or hidden traps each, and they'll also have either some gun emplacements and things like that, and also just other stuff, basically. But the other key detail, one in those 5, is nearly always your gang relic. Now, gang relics all act in the same way. If you've played any scenarios that involve generic gang relics, then these are basically exactly the same. They just have 1 extra rule according to which house gang you're playing. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. All right, so gang terrain. What is it? How do you get it? Well, like I said before, it's basically specific pieces of terrain that you can use for your gang, either when just defending or just to mess up your opponent's deployment, things like that. We're going to get into the specifics of each house's choices that you've got here, but generally speaking, the gist of it is that you're going to need to go to the trading post to get these. Some of them are common, some of them are quite rare, and they go all the way up to rare 11, I believe, by the looks of it here, which is pretty rare, so they might not turn up too often. But, many of them are also common as well, so bear that in mind too. Now, they also vary a lot in price too. Some start at sort of 10, I think 10 credits is the cheapest, when you've got some that are 100 credits or more there as well. So they really do vary in price and value, and that's reflected in how good they are generally. But I'll give my 2 cents on what I think about all of these now anyway. Now, something to highlight, like I said earlier, most of these have, most of the houses have their own sort of hidden traps or equivalent, and they're all themed on the house itself. Now, the hidden traps work in a sort of particular way. Basically, when you set them up, you put 6 markers down. One of those markers is secretly the trap. If someone triggers any of the other markers, you just remove them from play. But that's how hidden traps work. Once you find the real one, and that's the one that goes off and hurts you. So bear that in mind when I'm talking about hidden traps there as well. And gang relics are all the same. They all have the same sort of bonuses that you get with any generic gang relic to cool and leadership, I believe. But again, they have an extra rule there as well per house. So, starting with the best gang, House Cawdor. Now, you might not think Cawdor are the best gang, but you're wrong. So, House Cawdor, of course, they start off with their signature booby trap here, and that is, of course, Incendiary Traps. So, Incendiary Traps are really nasty, actually. Just to talk through quickly what they do. Now, these are hidden traps, so they have that hidden traps rule that I just mentioned earlier with the 6 different markers. Of course, going back on that, You can model these how you like. You could use the ammo crates that actually come with Necromunda because they work, but you could just paint them slightly differently if you've got some spare ones. If not, then you could do all sorts of things with Games Workshop bases and actually make your own little markers for these, which would be cool. So the Incendiary Traps, they can be deployed anywhere outside of the enemy deployment zone and outside of 6 inches as well, of course. And if an enemy fighter moves within 2 inches of these hidden traps, and this is the same rule for all of the hidden traps, so I'm not going to repeat this too much. But if you pass an initiative check, you can move as normal. If you fail that initiative check, that's where you see if you've triggered the trap or not. So if true, if it is indeed the 1 in 6 chance of triggering it, then you center a 5-inch blast on that trap, and all fighters within that 5-inch blast, which is the big pie template, suffer a strength 2, which is quite low, AP -2 though, which if it does wound you is going shredding mesh armor and doing well to get through most armor types. Only damage 1, but of course blaze. So blaze is the thing that you really want to be careful of here. To be honest, the threat of these booby traps is much better than the actual traps themselves. But this is definitely one of the good ones. Blaze in itself is just so damaging and so disruptive to your opponent that they're not going to want to risk going near these at all. So there you go. That was the Incendiary Trap there. Moving on to the Holy Gang Relic next. So this is indeed the Cawdor specific Gang Relic here. Now it's like any other Gang Relic. You put it in your own deployment zone and it's only available when defending as well. So you can't use this when you're an attacker in a scenario. You can only use it when you're defending. Of course, all of these, just quickly, all of these are only going to be fielded when they can be fielded in a scenario. So if for some reason you've got funny deployment rules or peculiar deployment rules that don't really work with this, then you just ignore them and you don't use these pieces. But anyway, the Holy Gang Relic, it's only available when defending, of course, and it gives you +2 cool and leadership for friendly fighters within 6 inches. Now that's the same for every single Gang Relic in the game. Enemy fighters can spend within 1 inches can spend a double action to defile it. So there is actually a scenario called Defile the Relic, and there's a couple in fact that you can defile relics, and you get +3 plus D3 XP for that as well. And after it's been defiled, it no longer offers any bonuses and can't be wrecked again. So faction fighters though, the special rule for Cawdor, if a Cawdor fighter is within 6 inches of it, you get +1 to hit and wound rolls in close combat only. So if you're defending, and well, you're going to be defending when you're using this, but if you're defending this relic and you've got a bunch of fighters around it, it's pretty cool, just quite nice and thematic that you get +1 to hit and wound in close combat, so suddenly your juves become almost quite scary. You could just stick a bunch of bone pickers around this and protect it to the bitter end, so it's quite cool, that one. So Hive Incense here, this is quite a good one. I like the idea of this. It's just like a huge, a huge censer hanging from the ceiling. But this one, again, you deploy it outside of your enemy's deployment zone, but you could put this somewhere very strategic, some sort of firing line that you think your opponent might want to be using. And this one's really cool, actually. So if you're within 3 inches of it as an enemy, it's -1 to hit at range, which is cool by itself. However, if you're activating within that 3-inch bubble as well, you must pass a toughness check. And if you fail that toughness check, you can only make one action, I believe. The rest protects can be made all the first move. Sorry, you can only make one simple move action. So that's pretty cool. Stops you moving through it quite, you can't double move through it and stuff if you don't pass that toughness check. So interesting. I mean, but really you're getting it for that -1 to hit at in shooting as well. So there you go. That's Hive Incense. The next one is Divine Brazier. So this one's pretty cool as well. Again, you deploy this one in your deployment zone, and all fighters are revealed if they're within 3 inches of it. So it's not very good if you're pitch black because it's revealing any fighters that you've got within 3 inches. So it acts as a 3-inch bubble of light, basically. Any fighter can spend a simple action, simple meaning that you can do 2 in a turn, to add blaze to a melee weapon. So that's pretty cool, and it's until the end phase of the following round. So if you're about to get charged and the enemy fighters are surrounding you and they're close to you and you've got a bunch of guys near this, you could dip all your weapons in it Again, I'm just thinking of bone pickers here, but you could dip all your knives and axes in it. Hope that you get priority and just charge. You know, you could even dip your weapons in it and then move, seeing as it's a simple, and then you could, you know, hopefully get priority in the next turn and charge people and stuff. So pretty cool. Blaze is nice, but it is quite sort of situational, that one. So you're not going to see a huge amount of use, but it could really turn the tide in a game. You never know. The next one and the last one and the best one for House Corridor, I think it's just the funnest because it's got the coolest theme, I suppose, and that's Caged Heretic. So you've literally got a witch in a cage here that they're just suspending over the battlefield. Now you can put this anywhere outside of your enemy's deployment again, and of course without 6 inches of your enemy fighters as well. But if an enemy fighter goes within 6 inches of this one, when ending their activation, fighters, except faction fighters, must take a nerve test. So if you don't pass that nerve test, you become broken, of course. So you see this guy in a cage and you just shit your pants. Quite funny. However, it can be destroyed and removed in the following way. So on a 5+, if it's hit by a blast template weapon, enemy fighters base to base can also spend a double action to pass a strength check or an intelligence test by freeing the heretic, and that gains you D3 XP for that, so that's pretty cool. I can't see enforcers or venators freeing heretics, but you never know. I certainly won't be freeing any heretics, seeing as I'm running a Ordo Hereticus warband in my upcoming campaign. But that is all of the 5 Corridor ones. We're now going to look at House Delac. Okay, so House Delac gang terrain now. Now these ones are all very fun and fluffy and thematic as well. The first one, we're going to get straight into it, is the hidden trap for House Delac. In fact, they've got 2 hidden traps by the looks of it. This is the less scary one. This one is Sight Blind Trap, so exactly the same as your Incendiary Trap as above. So you've still got your hidden traps rule, so you've got your 6 little markers down. One of them is the actual trap, and if you go within 2 inches of it, it can be a blast 5-inch photon flash grenade, basically. So it's not nearly as scary as the Blaze one, because the Blaze one can actually wound you. This can't. It just takes away your activation, which is still nasty, but it's single shot as well, so it only lasts that 1 shot in the game. It's not quite as scary, and I don't think your enemies are going to be that fussed about it, depending on who it is that you're playing against. Depending on if they've got quite a hoardy gang, they'll just risk it for a biscuit. But it's also a lot cheaper than the other hidden trap that you've got for Delac as well. This one's 40 credits off the top of my head. So there you go, that's that one. I think the Incendiary Trap definitely trumps that though. The next one is Shadow Veil. So this is really cool actually. So you can deploy this anywhere outside of your enemy deployment zone. And it's a pitch black bubble of 3 inches, which is really, really cool. So a little veil of darkness that you can hide under. Now, effectively, it blocks line of sight from one side to the other. It can be targeted though as a fighter, so the enemy can target it and shoot it down, which is interesting, but it's an enemy fighter that's in pitch black, so the pitch black rules still apply to shooting that fighter, so you're still going to need to be close enough to it, etc. But it's toughness 4, and if it's only got 1 wound, if it's reduced for any reason to 0 wounds, then it is taken off the battlefield, but can be used again in the next few games. Now what I would use this Shadow Veil for, and I think this is really fucking cool, is for your Overwatch long rifle sniper that you're inevitably going to have in a Delac gang. Stick it at the top of a building, in cover, in the dark, and just have an absolute party for the entire game pretty much. Now of course you could be a cheesy guy and you could shoot template weapons to the side of the darkness in the hope that you can get that fighter that's hidden in the darkness, but if you're at the top of a very narrow area, then it's going to be very difficult for your enemy to do that. So really cool, really cheesy. I would do it myself without any sort of remorse, because you're playing Delac. That's kind of what you're supposed to be doing, really, doing cheesy stuff. So that's your Shadow Veil. The next one is the Whisper Box. These have all got really cool names. The Whisper Box is pretty cool as well. So again, you've got to deploy this outside of your enemy deployment zone. Enemies within 8 inches, which is a bit bigger than some of the other ranges of the other traps and stuff, they suffer -1 to cool checks. So pretty cool, especially late on in a game where people are taking bottle checks and stuff. That stuff really matters, and 8 inches is quite big. An 8-inch bubble is quite big, really. However, an enemy base to base can spend a basic action to pass an intelligence check with a -3 modifier though to destroy it, and it's automatically repaired between battles as well, so you get it back. But -3 to your intelligence check. Most fighters haven't got great intelligence. You know, Vansar and Delac I think have better intelligence than most others, maybe Squats actually as well. But that's that one. The next one, and this is the nasty. Well, it's one of the nastiest traps. It's not the nastiest. We haven't got to Escher yet because they've got probably the nastiest ones. But this is the web trap, of course. As you can imagine, it does what it says on the tin. It webs you. So again, same sort of thing. The hidden trap rule is there as well. And again, if you go within 2 inches of it and you fail an initiative check, you get hit by a strength 5, AP -2, 5-inch blast web. Now, we all know how powerful web is. If it wounds you, you are automatically webbed, so you count as seriously injured. Really, really nasty. It's single shot though, luckily, but I don't think anybody is going to take the risk of going near any of those markers at all, because that's really, really nasty, of course. Web does do bad things to leaders and champions with multi-wound, because you are just webbed. It doesn't worry about the amount of wounds that you've got. Really, really nasty, that one. However, is a lot more expensive than the other traps, with I think being 80 credits off the top of my head, that one. So I think 80 credits is actually really, really good value for that when you compare it to you know, a web pistol, which is 90 credits. This is it's just really good, and it psychologically messes with your opponent quite a lot there, I think. I would totally use that if I was playing Delac again. In fact, I'm looking forward to playing Delac again. I think that's the next house gang that I'm going to play again. Once I've done the video for House Delac, the gang guide to House Delac, which I still haven't done. That's the web trap anyway. The next one and the last one for House Delac is the Euclidean artifact. Now the Euclidean artifact, you can deploy this in your deployment zone, and it's your gang relic basically. So you get your +2 call and leadership like you do with any other gang relic, with, you know, within 6 inches. And it's only available when defending as well. The special rule for the Delac one is that friendly faction fighters within 8 inches count as being in full cover. So that's awesome if you're defending in, particularly if you can imagine this on an Ash Wastes battlefield, where, I mean, a lot of these I don't think they've really thought about interactions with an Ash Wastes setting. This one is particularly powerful on an Ash Waste or on a sparsely populated by scenery board, you know. But yeah, it gives everybody within 8-inch bubble, full cover. That's fantastic. What's not to like about that one? That's probably my favourite of the two. Certainly my favourite of the two so far, the two gang relics. So the next thing we're going to do is look at House Escher. Now House Escher, if you ask me, just by reading these, have arguably got the nastiest ones, I think. And you'll see why. I'm going to get right into it now. So the first one is called Blade Cages. Now Blade Cages are hidden traps, just like you had your Incendiary Traps and your web traps, etc., and your flash traps for Delac. Same thing, so you move within 2 inches of one. If it's the right one, take an initiative check, and if you fail, imply the following. So if you move into base to base with the trap, you become webbed. As long as a fighter is trapped, it can't trap additional fighters, so it's not triggered by every movement. So once a fighter's been webbed, that's that. It can't get anyone else. But it's really fucking nasty, because unlike the Delac one, which is, you know, strength 5, yada yada, this one just webs you automatically without any wound roll. So not very nice at all. Yeah, that's that one for you. Now it can be removed by spending a basic action to disarm it within 1 inch and pass an intelligence check. But if you don't pass your intelligence check, you get webbed. So not worth the risk, if you ask me. Really nasty indeed. Now if you think that one's nasty, this one's even worse. This is Decapitators. And again, hidden traps. So you've got 2 hidden traps for Delac, and you've got 2 hidden traps for Escher, but only 1 for Cawdor so far. This one, again, you deploy this outside of your enemy's deployment area, exactly the same as the other hidden traps in the game so far. So if you fail that initiative check, and it's true, you suffer an injury dice. So it doesn't say, it's regardless of wounds here as well. So if you're an Orlock leader with 3 wounds and you go stumbling into this thing, then you could get a skull and you could be out of action, and that could be incredibly nasty for you. Again, you can try to be 1 inch away from it and pass an intelligence check to actually disarm it, but that is a big risk with something that's this powerful. Really, really nasty, that one. Just having that auto injury dice with no chance of saving, with no matter about how many wounds you've got. Really nasty. If you ask me, that's the nastiest of all the traps so far. The Decapitators sounds nasty as well because it's, Decapitators. The next one is gas canisters. So gas canisters are interesting. You put them in your deployment zone, and they're similar to a loot casket in terms of they can be moved around the board apparently. But friendly fighters within 1 inch can use them as a chem synth, but only for gas weapons. Now the interesting thing there is it's in your deployment zone. So if you are defending and you've got a chem thrower, then great, you can hold back with that chem thrower and use it with a chem synth. If not though, and if you want to be using this at range, it's a bit tricky because you're going to need to have some ranged gas weapons, and there aren't many in the game. Of course you can get gas bolts for bolt guns and things like that, but they're not seen that frequently. And they're limited as well. So yeah, it's a bit more situational, this one. This of course can be targeted by ranged attacks, and it's toughness 3. So if it takes any damage, it's a 3-inch gas blast as well. So you can hurt your own fighters if you're not careful by your enemy shooting it down. It's not the best one, is it? To be honest, I think it's highly situational. I mean, yeah, please do comment if you think that has more uses, but if it was toxin as well, then it would have more uses, but it is just gas, unfortunately. However, the next one, gas sensors, is a bit better. You can deploy this outside enemy deployment zone in the end phase. Fighters within 3 inches must pass a toughness check or suffer an immediate flesh wound, which is quite cool. Now, this can be thrown by friendly fighters as a choke gas grenade after the attack gets removed from the battlefield. So in a last-ditch attempt, you can actually grab it and throw it as a gas grenade, but it's gone if you do that. But this is nice, a 3-inch bubble just to put somewhere strategic to stop people going through it, because no one's going to go want to take a toughness check unless they absolutely have to, because gas is pretty nasty. And no save for that one either. So that's that one. I quite like that one. The last one for House Escher is their gang relic, and this is the Chemist cult relic. Again, same rules for any other gang relic, so you get your +2 cool and leadership within 6 inches. Now, friendly fighters within 3 inches can use it as a chem synth for gas and toxin, so it automatically negates the gas canister there in a lot of ways. And it also counts as assistance if seriously injured, so that's really cool actually. So you get that extra recovery dice if you're within 3 inches of it. For the enemy though, if you're ending your activation, you need to pass a toughness check or immediately suffer a flesh wound. So there's no flesh wound roll, you just suffer a flesh wound. So that's quite cool. And if it's defiled, the bonuses to cool and leadership are lost, but the other benefits remain. So definitely a good one, that one. But again, giving you a chem synth, it's okay. It's not amazing, but chem synths are only 15 credits, and if you're playing Escher, you're probably going to have a few chem synths before even having that anyway. So I wouldn't really use it myself. So House Goliath now, the big boys of Necromunda. These guys have got some interesting stuff, slightly different to the other 3 that we've looked at already. The first one is Amnio Canisters. Now Amnio Canisters, they go in your deployment zone, and faction fighters within 3 inches of them can remove a flesh wound during the end phase of any round. So that's pretty cool. Again, if you're defending and you've got that in your deployment zone, and you're getting hurt from all angles, then and your enemy's chipping away at your high toughness, then it's quite handy. I quite like that one. I don't think it's too expensive as well off the top of my head. I'll find out how much that one costs. But the next one is Furnace Barricade. This one I really like actually. So you put this in your deployment zone as well, anywhere outside enemy deployment, but it ignores blaze and melter traits if you're hiding behind it within an inch. Basically, if you're using it as cover and you're within an inch of it, you ignore blaze and melter. So pretty good against Vansar with melter stuff, and also Cawdor with all their blaze weapons as well. I really like that one. Particularly good for your heavy bolter. Heavy bolter Goliath champion, for example, who's got nerves of steel, just standing behind this thing in heavy cover. He's immune to melter and blaze, and he's got nerves of steel, so he can pump back with all those bolter shots. Who knows? That's just one way that you could use it. The next one is the heavy rivet cannon. So this is like a gun turret, basically. You put it in your own deployment zone, and it's only available when defending as well. It's got a heavy rivet cannon on it, which is I think it's slightly different from your regular Rivet cannon. I think it might have longer range here, but I'm just going to read it out for you. I could be wrong. It's got two profiles like the normal Rivet cannon here. It's got the rapid fire version, which is 6-inch short range, 18-inch long range, +1 to hit at short range, strength 4, -1 AP and 2 damage with rending and rapid fire 1. So that's pretty nasty if you get within 18 inches of it. The next one is your superheated. So this is not rapid fire, it still has rending, but it's also got blaze, and it's 3-inch short range, 12-inch long range, with +2 to hit in that 3-inch short range, with strength 6, -2 AP and 2 damage as well. Now it's 3-up ammo on both of those templates as well. Pretty cool, I quite like that, but the range always does bother me about Rivet cannons, and even this heavy Rivet cannon here as well. 18 inches, it's okay, but it's just not, if your opponent has to come and get you, and you're defending anyway, so if your opponent has to come and get you, then this could be quite good. But yeah, depends on the scenario they're playing, I think. The next one is Pillar of Chains. I really like the idea of this one. So you've just got this giant fucking pillar with loads of chains hanging from it, shackles and stuff on it. And this one gives you, you can re-roll one or both dice if the gang has a chance to capture enemies. So you get, if you've rolled your capture dice at the end and you roll a 6 and a 1 or something, you can re-roll that 1 and get quite a good chance of capturing enemy fighters. So that one's actually really good. It's not going to make any friends in campaigns because we don't like having our best fighters captured, but it is a valid strategy if you want to be capturing people. I quite like that one. It goes in your deployment zone. You can't destroy it or anything as well, so it's just there for the game. The next one is the Relic of the Forge. Now this is the Goliath's gang relic here as well, so the last one for House Goliath here. Again, same as any other gang relic, so you've got your +2 cool and leadership, la-di-da-di. And fighters within 3 inches, friendly fighters within 3 inches, ignore disarm, and they can re-roll failed ammo checks. So that's really nice, particularly for your weapons that you've got in Goliath lists that have got bad ammo, bolt guns, grenade launchers, heavy bolters, things like that. That's actually really nice for. And again, you're defending, so if you're defending this relic, then your re-rolling ammo checks is really nice, really nice indeed. And for the enemy as well, if ending their activation, they need to pass a nerve test or become broken. So that's pretty nasty. Apparently it's very, very scary, that one. So that's House Goliath. So we've done 4 so far, on to the last 2 gangs here. So the first one of those is House Orlok, of course. The bikies of Necromunda. They've got some really cool, fun sort of thematic ones here as well. The first one is awesome actually. It's Sawn off surprise. So you've got a little Booby Trap Sawn off shotgun, which is quite cool. Now you can deploy this anywhere. A Booby Trap that causes an automatic hit with a Sawn off shotgun, strength 3, damage 1 as a scatter shot, against all fighters within 3 inches when it explodes. So very cool. If any fighter comes within 2 inches for any reason, roll a d6. So on a 1, it's removed, it's a dud. On a 2 to 3, it's not triggered, and a 4, 5, 6, it is triggered, and within 3 inches, daddy. You get hit by the Sawn off shotgun. If triggered, any movement is interrupted while this is resolved. If a moving fighter is pinned or injured, the movement ends, of course. A Booby Trap can be targeted with ranged attacks. Apply a -1 hit modifier to short range and -2 at long range. And you roll a d3 basically. So on 1, nothing happens. On a 2, it's triggered and explodes. On a 3, it's disarmed and removed. So that's how that Booby Trap works. It's not a hidden trap, it's a Booby Trap, slightly different. The next one for House Orlok is Promethium Barrels. So you can deploy this at least 3 inches, from the enemy deployment zone, which is pretty cool. Apply the following effects to all fighters, friend or foe, within 3 inches. If activating within 3 inches, fighters can make only a single move, simple action during their activation, and there's +1 modifier to hit, if hit by blaze, sorry. So instead of being blazed on a 4+, you're blazed on a 3+. So that one's interesting. It's interesting that it's for Orlok. Obviously it would work much better for Cawdor, I think, but Orlok don't have a huge amount of flamey weapons, but they do still have access to incendiary charges and hand flamers and stuff, so you never know. The next one, I really like this one, is the Servitor Sentry. This has got a bunch of rules actually, but he is essentially a sentry that's stationary, and he's a servitor with a gun. Now, he's living war gear basically, so he counts as a fighter. He can't gain XP though, he can't take. He ignores injury rolls, lasting injury rolls, so he basically always goes out cold. He automatically passes cool and willpower checks, and he automatically fails leadership and intelligence checks. And he does not count towards your bottle rolls either. And he can't be a reinforcement, so he must be fielded on the battlefield, and he's immobile, so he can't actually move either. But you can be moved like a loot casket by friendly fighters, which is quite cool. They can drag him around. Now, his stats are as follows: movement 0, weapon skill 6, so pretty bad there. Ballistic skill 5, again fairly bad, but still this guy's just to be annoying. He's got strength 2, toughness 4 though, which is quite nice. Wounds 1, initiative 6, and attacks 1. No point giving you the mental stats because he automatically passes and fails those, as I mentioned before. And you get a choice of either an auto gun or a shotgun. Now, shotguns are 30 credits and just better, and auto guns are 15 credits and not as good. So for me, I would always take the shotgun on that one just because. But if you really do need that range, 24 inches compared to 18 inches or whatever it is, then sure, go for it. And you deploy him, in your deployment zone as well. So it's quite cool. It's quite fluffy, but it's probably not that good in the actual game itself. The next one for House Orlok is the toolbox. Now this one goes in your deployment zone as well, and it can be moved like a loot casket, so it is just a toolbox. But apply the following effects to friendly fighters within 1 inches when activating before making any actions. Make a free reload simple action, so that's quite cool. And mechanic fighters, so cyber mastiffs, ambots, servitors, sentries and servitors, can roll a 4+ to remove a single flesh wound or recover a lost wound. So quite like that one. It's interesting. You can drag it around, of course, and put it near your heavy weapon platform. Your heavy stub or a heavy bolter or something like that would be quite good to have, and just to give you that extra reload action for free is quite cool. And the next one, of course, the last one for House Orlok is the Road Relic. Now this is their gang relic. Works exactly the same as all of the other relics. However, this one has a heavy stubber turret on it, which you can operate with. You can man this one, which is quite cool. And it's got actually 2 profiles. It's slightly different heavy stubber to what you're used to. The burst profile is rapid fire 1, 20-inch short range, 40-inch long range, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1, and ammo 4+. Pretty cool. And then you've got suppressive here as well, which is something new. This one's 12-inch and 24-inch short and long respectively, which is a lot shorter than your typical or the other profile that we just read out. But it's +1 to hit a short range here. This is strength 4, -1 AP, damage 1, 4+ ammo. However, this one is rapid fire 3 and unstable. So it can blow up, but rapid fire 3, pretty nasty. You can essentially get 9 strength 4, -1 AP shots out if you really want to. But that one's really cool. A friendly fighter base to base can crew the heavy stubber turret. So if you've got someone who's got really high ballistic skill, that's pretty nasty, and it's got really good range on it. 40-inch range on that first profile is really nice, and this goes in your deployment zone as well. So I really like that one. That's the best sort of turret so far that I can see. So that's House Orlok. Okay, last but by no means least, we have the Dutchmen themselves, House Vansar. Now these guys have some interesting stuff. Of course, they're all sort of energy related, as you'd imagine with House Vansar, but the first one is a rad cannon emplacement. So the rad cannon emplacement has, again, you can only use it when defending. It goes within your deployment zone, and it has a rad cannon on it, basically. So I think this is the same as your normal rad cannon template. It's 24-inch short range, 48-inch long range with a -1 to hit at long range. Strength 2, -2 AP and 1 damage with a 3+ ammo. Of course, it has got rad phase, so on a 4+, anything get hit by it takes a flesh wound. And it's got the 5-inch blast as well, which is really nasty. So yes, it's low strength. However, sometimes that will wound, which is nice, but it's really those flesh wounds that you're dishing out, which are just great for softening up the enemy. So that's pretty cool. It's an emplacement, so it doesn't move. It's stuck in that place, just like the Rivet one as well. Really cool. I like that one. The next one is Thermal Mines. So that's the hidden trap for House Vansar here. Again, exactly the same rules for hidden traps for the other gangs, except I've just noticed House Orlok don't actually get a hidden trap. They only get a booby trap, which is slightly different. But yeah, there you go. I said there you go again, I keep saying it. So the thermal mines here, if you fail that initiative check within 2 inches, the trap is revealed. If true, all fighters within 6 inches, not 3 inches, suffer a strength 8, AP -4, damage 3, blaze and melter hit. Oof. So that one's really fucking nasty. Note that the melter trait only applies to fighters within 3 inches, not 6 inches. So that melter trait is still only short range as well. Really, really horrendous, that one. Not nice at all. Still not as good as the Decapitator though, just for that auto injury dice, but you know, strength 8, -4 and 3 damage. I mean, that's going to hurt a lot. So there you go. There you go. I keep saying it. Energy Sink, the next one now for House Vansar. So this one, outside enemy deployment zone, can be represented by a token or a marker. So you don't necessarily need a piece of terrain. You can just use a little marker for this, but it's interesting, this one. It affects the following weapons. So power, melter, las, and plasma. So all of the energy weapons in the game. If a fighter makes an attack with such a weapon, reduce the strength depending on the distance to the energy sink. So if you're within 3 inches of it, it's -3 strength. And if you're within 6 inches of it, it's -1 strength. So interesting. You could put this in a really strategic place. However, it's interesting because it's Vansar, and those are all traits that you're going to have on your own gang, and you're not necessarily, you know, if you're playing against Orlok or Cawdor, they don't really have that many energy weapons, so it's not really going to benefit you that much, even Goliath, to be honest. But if you're playing against another Vansar gang or someone who does have lots of energy weapons, then that one's quite cool. You could put it in a sniping spot or a firing line somewhere and use it strategically like that. Yeah, it's okay. The next one is Radcasters. So this one goes outside the enemy deployment zone. It can be represented by a token or a marker. Again, if within 3 inches in the end phase, pass a toughness test. +1 modifier per equipped item that protects against radphage, or suffer a flesh wound. Now it's an auto flesh wound. It's not actually radphage, so you're not having to roll a 4+ to flesh wound them. It is just you suffer a flesh wound. So that's pretty good. But friendly fighters in base to base can throw it as a rad grenade as well. So similar to the Escher one with the choke grenade there. Really similar actually, but not as good, pretty much. And the last one that we're going to talk about today is the Archaeo Relic. Now this one, of course, is Vansar's gang relic. Exactly the same rules for any of the other gang relics. So +2 cool and leadership for friendly fighters within 6 inches. Only available when defending. But the special rule for this one is that enemy fighters ending in activation within 3 inches must pass an intelligence test or gain insanity. If defiled, the effect is retained, but the generic effects are lost. So interestingly enough, the Vansar one doesn't actually give you, as your gang, any benefits. It just makes your enemies within 3 inches of it a bit more susceptible to insanity and stuff. So it's pretty nasty if they do get up close. But that's the Vansar one there. So in summary, we just went through all 30 of them or whatever it is. We've got 5 for each gang, I suppose. But if you ask me, I think the Escher ones are actually the nastiest and certainly the most evil ones, but I like them all. There's some really good sort of standout stuff there. And I just hope that more people use these. I want to see these more in our campaigns here in Wellington as well. I'm actually playing Venators in this campaign, so I don't think I'll be able to use any of those. But let me know what you think. Have you used these in campaigns? I'd be really interested to know how effective they actually are, because looking at them on paper is always different to actually using them in games. I've said this time and time again. It's like you look at weapons profiles on paper and you think, no, they're just no good. But then you use them in games. Like a sawn-off shotgun is a really good example. I've had really good results with sawn-off shotguns in games. But you look at them on paper and you think, meh. So there are many examples of that throughout Necromunda, and these booby traps are these house pieces of equipment and terrain here are really interesting. So I'd definitely like to know what you think of them, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Again, please like, share, subscribe, and check out my Patreon as well, and I'll be back with more Necromunda content real soon. Peace out.